This is Humans of Non-League, a podcast about the people who live and love football outside the spotlight. My name is Chris Nee, and this week's human is a genuine giant of our national sport. Francis Duku is a former Dulwich Hamlet, Maidenhead United, Crawley Town, Bromley and Gravesend Northfleet player of some repute. Since hanging up his boots though, he's become a champion of non-league footballers nationwide. We'll be getting on to that. First, let's bring in the man himself. Francis, welcome to the show.
Chris, good to speak to you.
It's been a little while. We have spoken before, but it was way back at the beginning of our game, which is going to be something we're going to talk about in some detail.
Yeah, it was indeed. I think we were, 6-7 years maybe when we first met. So, yeah, it has been a while. Yeah,
but potentially even longer than that. But we'll come on to that. I want to go all the way to the beginning. Where did you grow up? Where did Francis Duku go to school, for example?
Went to school at a place called St Thomas the Apostle in Maidenhead. So I grew up in Peckham.
Yeah.
And yeah, lived there until maybe about 12 years ago, and I've moved to where I am now. But yeah, grew up in Peckham, lots of friends who we still keep in touch with, football mad area, football mad school. And that's really, what kept pushing me along all the way through on the football side as well. School was a good school in terms of academics as well. But yeah, good experience growing up.
So did you enjoy the academic side of school as well?
Yeah, I did quite well. A stars to C. But football was always the big thing for me. But I just come from a family where my parents were both academic focused. Dad was a doctor, my mum was a nurse, and they wanted us to, all their kids to push on and go to college, uni, etc. I kept dreaming about football, but managed to do the both to keep them happy, keep a roof over my head, maybe.
When I was growing up, we lived in a kind of close, and all of the kids used to congregate on this bit of green patch of grass and just play football all the time, through the summer holidays, every night after school. Was it anything like that where you were growing up?
No, not where I lived, because we only had a really small area. But, it was a estate which had a green patch, I don't know, which could have been 20 by 20. So we did play in there, but there were quite a few kids when we were growing up, so you wouldn't really get much quality in the game. To be able to get more of that happen was at school. I used to go to school. School would start at, let's say, 9 o'clock. There were times when I'd be in the playground at 8:15. We'd have all arranged to come in early and we'd play football before school, which then obviously means you're going into the classroom. Everyone's already sweaty and tired or whatever, but just people wanted to come in and play. When it's the good weather, I should say as well. No one did it in the rain or the winter. But that was really the bigger experience of playing, the big groups of, let's just say wild, but street football, people call it now, where there's no real rules or goals. It's just get the ball, play, practice your skills, learn something new. If you could do something that would, get everyone excited, you became popular for the day, for the week, and that's what people lived for. Used to also go to a few other, estates near where I lived where people would be playing as well. So you try and get involved there, but obviously if you're one of the kids from a different estate, unless you knew people, it was always a bit trickier to get involved in the game because there's just always so many people who wanted to play.
So you're a gooner?
I am indeed.
So it's a good time to be getting into them, man.
At the minute, they're causing me a lot of heartache and pain. If you want to see a grown man cry, keep this conversation going on that line.
Yeah. Well, how about 89? 89 into early 90s, that was all right, wasn't it?
Yes. Well, let's say it was the George Graham days, which was effective, rather than the football we've become accustomed to over recent times under Wenger, and then now we've gone full circle to we're rebuilding. Let's just say we're rebuilding.
Transitional phase.
Yeah, exactly.
Who were the players, Arsenal or otherwise, that inspired you growing up?
First player really really got my attention would have been Ian Wright. I was always a fan of football, say before, but Ian Wright and his whole everything about him. He's from South London. He was just played with fun, loads and loads of fun. It would be probably a surprise for people to think that because I was a centre half, all the way through. So again, being an Arsenal fan, the likes of your Tony Adams was one who really did catch my eye as well, just because he was a Arsenal man, wasn't he? He was a leader and he was absolutely the Arsenal man. As a knock-on then as well from, my obsession with Italian 90, watching Italian football at the time. Don't know, you remember, I'm sure. But
absolutely.
The James Richardson show and things like that, which just went through my Saturdays, watching that all the time. My Sundays, then I'd fall asleep in front of the TV again and again, but I'd insist to my mum and dad, no, I'm watching it. I'm watching it. Don't turn the channel. And at the time, it was full of great defenders. Your Maldinis, your Barresis, people who watched it properly. Sampdoria had Viekovod. There was people, Nesta Sensini at Parma. There's people all over, which if you really enjoyed the game, as I did at the time, I was just watching all the time. But character-wise and flair, everything else, I have to say Ian Wright, even though I'd have been trying to stop him if I'd ever been good enough to play against him.
Were you watching Serie A and learning from those defenders, or was that too young?
No, I was trying to.
Yeah.
I mean, bizarrely enough, but at school at the time, we were learning Italian. So you do French, Italian, or German as one of the, your foreign language at secondary school. So I was convincing myself that it was meant to be. I'm supposed to end up playing in Italy. So really put my head into trying to learn Italian at that stage. But seeing, you listen to the commentary on the TV, especially when they'd be rating the defenders and looking at some of the things they were doing and talking about them. It was an attempt to educate myself for sure. Now I'm older, I can appreciate a lot more about finer arts of defending. But yeah, definitely was an attempt to try and learn the art of it, because that's what it was described as in Italian football. They did view defensive shape, defensive performance and ability as an art, whereas most other countries in the world seem to think of it as that disgusting thing people do to stop the good players from having fun. So yeah, it was an education. Definitely was an education.
So in terms of organised 11-a-side, I know it's changed a little bit these days, but 11-a-side football, you and I would have been playing much younger than they do now. Who was the first team that you really lined up for on a proper pitch for a proper game?
A team called Beckenham Social. Never ever forget them, because my best friends at school at the time, a guy called Jamie, his mum and dad we lived 5 minutes, 10 minutes walk from each other. He used to pick me up, take me there all the time. And I did well for them, did really well for them. It took a bit of convincing of my mum and dad to say, yeah, you could go and play. It was just, their thing was, my dad was athletic, he played tennis, but his thing was play sport for fun and for, a bit of enjoyment and discipline, rather than you're going to, potentially have a career in it. So when it became, can I go and play on Sundays, as a family, we'd go to church and it'd be, well, what are you going to do there? I was like, okay, well, I'll just go an earlier time by myself, okay, well, you've got homework, what are you going to do there? All right, well, I'll get the homework done first before we go. The game's in Beckenham. We're not going to take you. What are you going to do there? Jamie's mum and dad stepped in. Everything they threw at me was just like, look, I've got to go. I've got to make sure I get to go. And I had a great time. Really, really had a great time. Played for them for about 3 years before I outgrew them and when I started playing district football for the school, people started coming to try and say, come and play for my Sunday team instead, because we were, there were teams pushing at a higher level. Older boys were at pro clubs and were trying to say, look, we can help you, get there as well. So I ended up leaving to sign for a team called St Thomas Anne's, who, again, if people at my age would know, they were the team in South London. They changed their name a year later to be South London Select, because that's in effect what they were claiming to be, the select players from South London. But my time at Beckenham Social was great. Made some good friends. The people there looked after me superbly. Still speak to the assistant manager now. He's also the dad of one of the people I went to school with. He used to do things like, he was, at the time he had Ford Escort XR2. Do you remember those? The convertible, where you had to actually pull the roof down by hand. But, that's what it was at the time. And he had one of those cars, and, he used to come down the road from school and he'd pick me up just to drive me back home sometimes. And I felt like the man, because everyone's seeing me get into this, this convertible. Sometimes the son wasn't even there. His son was picked up by his mum or was going elsewhere, can't remember. And he'd just be, sometimes just picking me up and dropping me off. And it just made me feel absolutely like the man, just because I could play football half decent for his team. It was good memories, good times.
I think that the drive of making sure those obstacles weren't in your way in those early days is indicative of the mindset of the non-league footballer, because you have to have a certain level of commitment in order to be a part of this well. Take afternoons off work, go all over the place on a Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Saturday afternoon, training, all of this stuff that people forget when you're getting, a pretty small compensation for it financially, but you get so much out of the game. You need to make sure that you're completely into the idea of doing it. And if you're removing church homework as obstacles, it sounds like you were just cut out to play the game. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to do. My dream was to be a pro. I was devastated when injury happened at a time which I thought we was actually going to be, going into the game. There were times when I thought I should have been in the game already. My opinion, and everyone's got their own opinions and, their ability and other people's, but I thought I was good enough to be a pro, but didn't happen. So clearly I wasn't good enough. But then in non-league, it was just, I'm going to make the most of it as I could. As much as I can get out of it, I'm going to. And when I'm saying that, I'm not talking about money, because, I won't lie, I'd earned a reasonable wage at times, but not all the way through. And there were times I turned down much, much bigger salaries to stay at what I thought was the right club for me. As I say, the life of a non-league player, you really do need to be committed to what you're doing to do it well. And when you turn up on a Saturday or a Tuesday and, you may not play the best, it's not the same as for a pro where they've had all week to prepare and, they've had things to just forget about because the only focus was football. There were times I got to games. I remember one time in particular, Jack Pearce at Bognor, he'll always talk about this. He'll never let me forget this. We had a game when I was at Gravesend. We played Bognor away on a Tuesday night and I got out of work late. Can't remember the reason. I got out of work late. I missed the coach from Gravesend. I couldn't get there. I had to get a train to Bognor from the city. So this is obviously all last minute. So you run to the train station. I need to get to Bognor. How much a ticket? Can't remember what I told you, but you pay on the day and it's even more money. Thinking, don't need this, but I've got to play. Everyone's waiting for me. Pay for the ticket, get there, get to the station. I'm already late. Kickoff's at 7:45 and I think I get to the station at, I can't remember, 7:15 or something like that. Wait around, get a cab, get the cab in there. Jack swears I turned up on a motorbike for some reason. I can't remember that for the life of me, but he swears I turned up on a motorbike. But literally got there, and I've been on the phone to manager Andy Ford at the time all the way through. He's rated me enough. He's just kept my shirt for me. He said, look, what time are you getting here? Right, we're going to wait. We put you on the team sheet. Literally got there, stripped off my work suit, straight into my football kit, 5-minute warm-up, played the game. We won 2-0. I scored both goals as a centre-half. Jack looks at it and thinks, how have you got here? It's affected the game like that. He says, that sticks in his mind. But it's the kind of thing which, as a non-league player, you have to deal with sometimes. There'll be times I've got to games late and I've then been appalling. I have been absolutely awful. But no one wants to hear the story of, well, you had a disaster at work that you had to fix first, and then you've not slept all night because you've been, whatever's took on, and you've just got to the game just in time. People just want to see you play and play well. So it's a constant, battle, but constant balancing act players have to go through to be able to make it work.
Did you have a player in that squad who was looking after fines for that kind of thing?
Usually it would have been me, I would have thought. And you could guess I wouldn't have fined myself. Now, at that stage, I think would have been Jimmy Jackson, probably, who was Gravesend legend, absolute legend. So again, there's people where I look at it and think I could have, should have been a pro. There's people like him who I say for sure 100% should have been. Absolute wonder of a left foot, consistent beyond belief. But he's a local legend. At the time, whenever we was in Gravesend, wherever he'd go, his family was well known. People just loved him. He's the nicest guy and a great, great player. But yeah, he'd have been on fines. I don't know if I'd have paid him or not, though. I'd have maybe tried to talk my way out of it.
Not after scoring 2 goals.
Yeah, exactly. Got you through the next round of the cup. What more do you want?
I'm pretty sure I only actually saw you play once. And it was a playoff at Leatherhead in 2011, which I'm not going to ask you about.
You mean the one which we threw away? Yeah, cheers.
Yeah. So I need to ask you, having seen only that game, what style of defender would you describe yourself as?
Physical. So I'm big guy, as you would have seen and know. When I grew up playing, I was a centre mid. I was a creative centre mid. Just the way we played in Peckham, everyone valued the skillful players. And you just learn to, skills and tricks. And I was able to just take that onto the pitch. I was athletic, mobile, and I was always thinking of tricks and different bits and pieces. Scored a lot of goals and used to, was quite fit, so used to just make a lot of runs, which people struggle to keep up with me on. But as I grew older, I had a growth spurt, which really changed a lot for me, because I became less mobile, but became also bigger and more powerfully built. And my game just slowly started adapting from where I couldn't do the tricks and flicks and skills so much anymore. I went from centre mid to a right mid to a right back to centre half. And then when I settled at centre half, must have been at the age of 16, I think it was 16. I did quite well. Got looked at pro level, ended up going to do what would have been YTS back then for Reading, stayed at college, but went and travelled and played for them on the Saturdays, captained their youth team and all this kind of stuff, despite the fact I wasn't training. Everyone was full-time. I just used to turn up and play. It was just something that happened quite naturally for me. But using those natural attributes is what I kept pushing on, so I was quite big, quite strong, quite fit. I just kept developing those, and to an extent, I didn't have a choice, because some of the managers I played for just saw that. And, in football at that time as well, you got put into boxes very quickly. So the moment they saw I was 6 foot plus and, quite built, it would be, that's what I want you to do. And that's what I just kept going with, rather than the bits which I'd grown up learning and came more naturally to me. So the player I was at the end versus the player I was when I started, two very, very different things.
Did you have a manager through your career who recognised that your capability on the ball was a real contributing factor to being a good defender as well?
The manager I played for who most demanded people to get on the ball was actually one of my best mates, Gavin Rose. So he grew up in Peckham. That's where I knew him from. I've known him since the age of five or six. We grew up in the same area. And as he went on his coaching career, he always insisted people would play football, and play football properly. By the time I played for him, I was at the other end of it. So he had a lot of frustrations with me at times, but, he knew what I could do and wanted people to do in his teams. But it was near the end of my career when I did that. Most of the other managers who I played for were more, on the non-league side, was defend, and then let the midfielders and forwards, go on to play. If you could do something with the ball and, keep it in the right areas, yeah, they'd love it. But if you used to do it and then it would go wrong, you'd hear about it for a long, long time. So when you see on TV these days, when people talk about, again, I'm not trying to jump too high here, but, the Guardiolas, whoever, who say it's okay, they have to try, because it's actually a point to what they're doing. The non-league attitude was, okay, you can try it, but just don't lose it and don't let them score. Because if they do lose, you do lose it and they score, that's it. There is no, I could see what he was trying to do, or, there's a second chance of it. It would just be, he'd be dropped. So just defenders defend and midfielders forward do their bit. And I was actually quite good at retaining instructions. So it wasn't just, defend as an instruction, but in terms of, the shape, and then being able to help people understand where they should be in the shape, or then formations and patterns that we'd worked on during the week. I was actually quite good at taking that on. So when it was just the thing of make sure you just defend, I maybe took it too literally and just defended. But it was effective and contributed to a reasonable non-league career.
You come through into adult football with Maidenhead United, Crawley Town. They were early on, right?
Yeah, first team was Romford though.
Oh, okay.
So I had, basically when I was 16, I played for, or 17 even, I played for Welling. Welling at the time were the only non-league team who had a full-time YTS team. So they were competing against all the pro teams in what was then the southeast counties. Did really well with them and ended up going for an extended trial at West Ham, where I met a guy called Dave Goodwin, who's really well-known scout for people my age in the Blackheath and London, South London area. He thought, and I thought as well, I should have been offered something at West Ham, but West Ham had done me a real favour, because the youth team manager basically decided I wasn't ready for pro, which was right, and he wasn't going to take me out of college for 1 year YTS. Just didn't think it was right for me, for my life as a whole. In hindsight now, I'm grateful. I am grateful, because I would have taken a YTS if he'd offered it. Where it would have ended up, who knows? I may have done well. I may have got a deal somewhere else, who knows? But this Dave Goodwin had a lot of confidence in me, and he was the one who then took me on to Reading. Felt I should have been definitely signed as a pro. I felt the same. But then he took me into non-league from there with for his support. His brother owned Romford, and that's how I ended up there. But then when I moved to university, I went to actually Reading University, because part of the plan was for me, I would have stayed at uni while being a first, second year pro. I was that convinced Reading were going to sign me because of all the, everything I've been doing. Reading became my choice of university, and I've kind of lined it up to be able to study around, what would have been playing, pro football. Didn't get a pro contract, but by that time, I was already committed to Reading Uni. So then that's where I ended up at Maidenhead. Again, Dave Goodwin took me there because he knew Alan Devonshire, who was the manager at the time. I think it was his second job in non-league at the time. And great experience playing for him there.
When you're pushing through at that sort of age and you're suddenly playing against grown-ups, your physicality is the kind of thing that makes 16, 17, 18-year-olds really click in a first team in adult non-league football, I think. Did you find it easy to make that step up?
To be honest, I'm a big guy, but a lot of people would describe me as a gentle giant. And it's more when I lose my temper that people will realise, oh, he's he's as big as he is. Or maybe I realise I'm as big as I am. I think maybe a thing. But people see me and say, oh, the size of him. And I wouldn't actually notice it too much. But when I'm playing, at that age, people were more, I suppose, seeing my size and being cautious rather than me going around and throwing my weight around and making the most use of it, which would definitely have made it easier for the transition, from youth team football into senior football, especially at those levels. I think, Romford, so my first team, the pitch there was horrendous, absolutely horrendous. Anyone who remembers it, the old Sungate ground, when it got to December, is literally, if you had games weren't off, every other week, you'd be amazed. Ground was always flooded, and you'd be running along, in those matches when it was on, with mud seeping into your boots, because it was just not well drained. But the football then, on that kind of pitch, and it makes perfect sense if you look at it now, can you get the ball forward? Can you not give away, unnecessary chances for you trying to turn on the ball and slip in? And it then became more of a fight game, which, being my size and, height, etc., was something which gave me an advantage over smaller people or people who just didn't have the same physicality. So it definitely did help.
Were you playing against 32, 33-year-old lads who were teaching you the snide arts of the game as well?
Oh, yeah, massively.
Bit of a clip on the ankle, pull on the shirt.
Clip around the chin, and, I think had my eye split a couple of times, and, some of the times I'd leave an elbow on you. And it always, because a bit of my naivety at the time, when they'd be, oh, I'm sorry, I'd take it as it was an accident. And I'd just be also thinking, don't let them see they've hurt me. It was just a kind of a, natural defense of, all right, even if it hurts, you've got to try and continue as if it hasn't. As opposed to then me going around and putting it on them, because people would always like, dude, you should smash him. But if I didn't see the need to, and it kind of helped me in my defending sometimes as well, because maybe a bit back to the whole Italian thing of trying to look at where you can anticipate the ball, rather than having to think how you can smash through somebody. It was more eye on the ball, seeing his movement, how you can use your brain to get around him to the ball, rather than just thinking, kick through him. The kick through him part people expected. And again, the comments people have said to me over the time was they would have expected me to be going around smashing people all over the place, and that would have just helped with the aura or the view of what I'm doing on the pitch. But my thing was, if I don't need to do it, then don't do it. So I didn't. Ultimately, I probably got it wrong, though, because I say I didn't make as much of my career as I thought I probably could or should have.
So did you avoid bookings most of the time?
Yes. I think I only ever had one season where I got more than 5 bookings. And I only ever picked up one red card, which was for 2 yellows as well, in 16, 17 years of playing.
I bet you remember that like it was yesterday.
I do.
Where was that?
Gravesend. Picked up 2 yellows. Can't actually remember the team I played against, but I think the first one was for descent. The second one's for a trick. I'm not one who does descent as well. That's just not me. So I don't even know what happened at the time. I just remember walking off thinking, how's that happened? How have I just been sent off? And it was this, it's the one time I got a red card in my career. And say it was for 2 yellows, which were, I wouldn't even have minded so much if it was for 2 big bad tackles, which people have look, the big centre half has gone and smashed the guy, and that's what he's supposed to do. Because then I could at least point to people at some point and say, look, I did actually do it once or twice. But it was for two silly things, and spoiled the record of playing without a red card.
Let's counterbalance it with the good side of Gravesend then. So you've said before that winning the Conference South with Gravesend and Northfleet was the highlight of your non-league career. Tell me a bit about that experience, what that season must have been like. It was pretty special, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, Gravesend was an amazing time. Andy Ford was the manager at the time, assistant with Phil Hanford. And when we got promoted, he brought in Ron Hilliard, who was ex-Gills keeper as well. But the team spirit Andy Ford created at Gravesend was second to none. It was absolutely unbelievable. There were times we were playing and we would be, as a team, like we'd hate the fact he would never give us a night off. Like actually, he would never, if there was you couldn't train because it was wet, windy or raining, he would find a school in the middle of nowhere and tell you, be there at 7 o'clock and you play bench ball, if nothing else, just so he could get you in, having a sweat and, good workout on. And as a group of boys, we were all thinking, we need a night off, or why is he doing that for? We just need to everyone, let's just pretend we didn't, get the message or whatever else. But we'd always turn up because we were in it together. Everyone was in it together. Remember one Saturday as well, we had a game was called off. And for whatever reason, he insisted we had to train. And this must have been around about Christmas time, because everyone was thinking we could just do, with the time off, everyone just spend some time with family, whatever else. I remember we ended up training somewhere, which was right by a graveyard. So sometimes people are having to go and retrieve the balls from right by or on the edge, or, it was just fitting where you could, because it was public parks, which he was finding for us there. And that discipline took us a long, long way, because when we won the league, we beat Canvey and Aldershot to the league title, and they were both big players at that time as well. The Canvey under Jeff King, Aldershot with George Borg at the time. Aldershot they're the ex-football league clubs. They had 2,000 odd fans, most weeks, which gave them, an ability to do stuff. Canvey, Jeff was he's from the island, self-made man, made a lot of money, and he put his money where his mouth was to try and build a team which would compete. And then us as Gravesend, we had a reasonable crowd, reasonable following, which grew as we were winning, and everyone could sense something special was happening. But comparatively, very low paid, but just a great bunch of boys who came together who wanted to play football. And that team spirit took us a long, long way, really long way. So when we won the league that year, everyone was, looked back on it and thought that is the culmination of probably about a 3-year process. I think it was the third year I was there when we won it, but culmination of a lot of hard work, a lot of sacrifice, and we just kept improving and improving and improving. And we just wanted to prove, to beat the odds. People say, no, they can't win it. Canvey will win it, or Aldershot will win it. And that just spurred us on. That siege mentality people talk about was something Andy Ford had created massively within us. And personally, I did well. Player of the Year, got a great reputation in non-league, got called up for the England C trial games, and I think the man of the match in that first game. And at the times when people weren't really taking people from the second tier into the England C squad, I was on the standby list, and things are a bit of a breakthrough for me in terms of my football that year as well.
What was the end of that season like? Did you win it with room to spare, or was it a down to the wire job?
Down to the wire.
Was it?
The last game of the season. I think we were away at Bedford Town, and we had to better Canvey's result. So I think they were a point behind us, and we just had to better their result. So we ended up winning 1-0, I believe, if I remember correctly, 1 or 2-0. I think it was 1-0. I had a hand in one of the goals, I think the only goal. I kind of used my physicality, ball's gone up to the keeper, I've jumped, keeper's tried to catch it over me, I've nudged him a bit, it's dropped down, centre forward Che has scored, and I think Canvey drew 1-1, if I remember rightly. So we were waiting for people talking under terraces, there was tracking the Canvey game, looking at our game, and when we won, everyone's looking around nervously. Then the word came through that Canvey had drawn, and it just all went off. We had a great celebration that day.
I bet. Did you make the step up with them the following season?
Yeah, I did. So when we'd won the league, I got called up then as well for Middlesex Wanderers. who are non-league touring side. It's supposed to be, they previously were like the England non-league team. Then an England non-league team was established, but then they just became a top end touring side, but not just for ability, but people of character as well. The whole thing was to spread goodwill around the world, with football, going different countries to play football. So I got called up there, and I was then asked to sign for both Canvey and Aldershot. They were both put very, very good offers on the table. I think, without sounding too big-headed, I was probably the defender most people wanted in their team at the time at that level. And I turned them both down because I'd say it'd been 3 years worth of work to get to play at the Conference National. And we just won promotion, and I thought, I'm not going to give this up. Realistically, I knew one of those teams would have gone up that next year because the money which they were putting into the team, I knew they were going to both have strong squads, but I couldn't, know which one would definitely be it. And I knew I was already in that top division now, and I'd be a main player for Gravesend if I stayed. So I turned down the money and stayed. But then that is the summer, that pre-season, I broke my leg, and everything changed because just wasn't quite the same player after that leg break.
I think we need to talk about Dulwich Hamlet as well. Your leg break is massive in what we're going to come on to. Mm-hmm. You are united with Gavin at Dulwich Hamlet, which is where I know a lot of people who got into London and South East non-league football around the same time as I did will recognise you from. Mm-hmm. How did that move come about? Because you went to Bromley in between, is that right?
Yeah, I played at Bromley, and we did really well there. Had a great time at Bromley. They played insisted on playing football as well. I think that was that actually would have been the first team that insisted on playing pure football. Simon Osborne and Bobby Bowery had come in as player coaches under Mark Goldberg, and we had a great team. I mean, anyone who knows South London football at the time, there was it myself, Bobby, a guy called Donald O'Sullivan at the back, who he again should have been a pro, but he was just so laid back, it was unreal. Centre forward and centre half, so much ability. Tutu Enriquez, a bit younger, but he's in and around it there. Great young player in it. Midfield was Simon Osborne, Barry Moore, Peter Adenyi, Junior Caddy. A young Sam Wood was playing. Gareth McCleary was in the squad. Had a Gareth Williams, Nick McDonnell up for it. We had a really, really good team and played football right the way through. But we won the playoffs that year, stepped up with them into the Conference South. Didn't have my best time after. A lot of stuff which had changed off the pitch for me as well, but didn't have my best time. Left there, and I think I went to Fisher, and I probably ended up, I can't remember, I think I played somewhere else before I ended up at Dulwich. Kingstonian, that's it, ended up at Kingstonian. And then when Gavin had gone in at Dulwich, he just asked me to come in and help out. He'd got a young team. He's done a lot of great work with young players. Wanted a bit of experience. He knew I was, obviously at the wrong end of my career in terms of age, but wanted a bit of experience, someone he could trust, someone to help the young boys out. So he more approached me as a friend. Look, we can't pay you what you've been earning in the past, but what we can do is enjoy your football, have a good time with your mates, play with us, and just be local again. I was like, yeah, no, don't worry about it. I'm not, not going to be a millionaire of football. That's not the intention. So let me come and enjoy the time. So yeah, that's where we ended up there.
Seems like a great place to play.
Yeah, it was. I mean, him and Junior, great. So they're friends of mine from years and years. Junior, I've known, first met him playing against him. Gavin, say we just grew up in the same area, and they just have fun with, they play football the right way. They try to teach people. And part of the thing for me as well was, say, with the amount of work they were doing with young people at that time as well, it just also gave me my first real, say, opportunity to kind of put something back, because some of the youngsters coming through, I was spending a bit of time speaking to them as well, just learning, how to help them, in the same ways I'd seen, Gavin do for years, to be fair. Whereas when I was playing and maybe going for different moves, because we used to play together, that's when we grew up, me and Gavin, played together in non-league for a good while, but then Gavin took on his coaching career much further. and I was more just continuing to play and just see some of the sacrifices he'd made, and he impacted people's lives and developed some really good footballers. And yeah, I just supported that a bit and had fun along the way.
You're obviously interested in the well-being of those young players. Did it ever cross your mind to go down the coaching route rather than what you ended up doing?
I'm not patient enough. I really am not patient enough. I think some of the I did a bit of coaching over summer with some of different school schemes or schemes of clubs, people I'd worked with, and if there were things which weren't being done correctly, I would get frustrated, but at the same time have to realise, some of these people are just there for fun. But when you got into the actual, semi-pro world of it, where people are, playing with the purpose of 3 points or an actual direction, I just wasn't patient enough to take the time to learn what I'd need to, but also then knowing some of the stuff I've had to deal with, especially in hindsight now, some of the stuff I've had to deal with from some of the players has been, I do need my distance at times rather than being responsible for them all the time, in that team environment. So coaching may have worked, but management would have been trickier for me. When
you're playing for Dulwich Hamlet, are you aware of the club's popularity with football writers in London, non-league tourists and those kind of people? They're a very popular destination for people coming in from the outside of the game. Does that filter through to the players?
Well, I think it is now, but when I first signed there under Gavin, I don't think it was like that at all, because we were, at the time we were attracting some of the, I remember Tuesday midweek games where we had 90 fans or something like that, 50 fans in there at times. It's something more that built on over time as the team, the style of play Gavin introduced was, embedded and became successful. And then the work being done off the terraces, someone like Mishi, rest in peace. I mean, he's, passed not too long ago. But someone like Mishi was a huge influence on that as well. And that balance of the work and the vision of Gavin, Cabs, and, what they were trying to do, which then aligned to someone like Mishi prepared to also put, his work into it, just created that combination, which resulted in where it is now. When I first signed for Dulwich, in fairness as well, when I was maybe 20 under Bill Smith.
Oh, yeah.
And at the time, they had a good following, 700-800 fans for most weeks, because Dulwich historically, they have been one of the big non-league clubs. But when I came back the second time with Gavin, say the numbers were totally different. Saturdays were probably down to about 200-300. But so I can really remember some midweek games where there were more players than fans. So, it's that kind of scenario at times. And then they've just built it up over the time.
We first met a little while ago now when you were first setting up our game. But before that, as a player, I think you were involved in various bodies. And I hope it's fair to say that you've been pretty active in making football a better place over the years. And that includes work with Kick It Out and with Show Racism the Red Card. What were your roles when you were involved with those organisations?
Both on the education side. So, again, as much as I say the patience to not be a coach, there are other things which, would require patience. And I've definitely, been able to adapt to deliver on those. So being able to go through some of the education pieces with people and try to help them understand is, well, one of the things which we tried to do with the roles of Kick It Out and Show Racism the Red Card. Used to go into schools with Show Racism the Red Card all over Southeast mainly, but there were times of being asked to, be in Birmingham for a 9 o'clock school day to deliver an education workshop. And the whole thing was, basis is people would hear the footballers are coming in and there'd be a day of activities planned, the workshops and activities, and we'd just try and speak to them in the way they'd understand, based on the fact that they love football. To be honest, some of them, when they told footballers were coming in, they'd probably be expecting David Beckham and then we'd turn up. But it was good. It was good. The kids were, working with the ages which we worked with at times there. They were, really, it really opened your eyes to how impactful things could be if delivered in the right way. And then likewise with Kick It Out, I think Kick It Out, we spent more time in and around the professional clubs, giving people confidence to maybe ask questions and explore some topics which, sometimes people are less comfortable speaking about. Racism is a subject which, especially you see, these days, still hasn't gone away. and it's miles away from, from going away, but it has to be addressed rather than hidden away from. And that's what we'd do. We'd go in to try and facilitate addressing it, not trying to tell people they're right and wrong, unless they're obviously right and wrong. There's some things which is just not up for debate. But if people have a fear or a view, we just try and walk through it with them to help them explore it without sounding judgmental. I have my clear views on it, but at the same time, I can't go in and expect everyone to share my view. I can just justify my view, though, in any environment, and that's what I say to them to do. If you genuinely believe this, that, or the other, you've got to be prepared to stand by it and explain why you do. And if that's your genuine belief, no one can ask anymore. If it's not your genuine belief and you're jumping on a bandwagon for whatever reason, you've got to ask yourself a lot of questions.
You're coming to the end of your playing career, and our game is, I assume, by this point, bubbling away as an idea. Why don't you tell us what it is, where it came from, what the aims are?
Our game was running alongside the time of Kick It Out and Show Us the Red Card. I'd actually started it first, and then once I'd left work to focus on our game, it created the opportunity to support those charities and work in a environment that was suited to where my focus was now. But touched on earlier, when I broke my leg at Gravesend, I had an experience where basically the diagnosis was incorrect. I was told it was just a sprain by some physios and a club doctor, where we were playing away in a pre-season tour, and I basically ended up going out with the boys that night on crutches because I was told, look, have some painkillers, you'll be fine. When you have a drink, all of a sudden the pain feels less and less. But when you wake up the next morning, you realise just how bad it was. And I believe it had a massive impact on my career. In that when the operation took place, it was done as if I was a layperson, not someone who's trying to be a high-performing athlete. So it left me with a lot of scar tissue in my ankle where they decided to pin it to help stabilise rather than operating, in the most efficient way to get me back to playing sport again. So that misdiagnosis and, my view, the incorrect operation had a massive impact on me. But I was lucky in that I worked in the city and I had comprehensive medical insurance as part of my job. So when I came out of hospital, I was able to get private physio paid for, but the damage was, too far done to recoup to the way it should be, but it still put me in a better position than most would be. And having that insurance and the network of friends I had who played at a high level, who could then put me in touch with the right people, at least gave me a chance to rehab as best as possible. And then when I was reflecting on this, as I was back playing and seeing more people get injured, it was blatantly obvious to me there's just so many people who just don't have the same connections that I did or the same access to, the funding through the insurance, which I had. So they were then being forced to stop playing or, they're just really getting no help whatsoever. And that's the basis of which our game came from. I looked at how can I help players to access the things which I know I have access to, but even despite that access I had, I didn't get the optimal treatment. So can I help that happen, at non-league level, whereas in the pro game it's taken for granted and given as a matter of course. So that's been where I got our game idea from, and I've grown it to where it is today.
What do players get out of an Our Game membership?
I describe it as a no-brainer because they'll pay to be a member, and the essential thing they all get is access to some cash to be able to use on medical costs. Now, these costs can be football related or non-football related, but I'm speaking to the football markets. I'm saying, look, just use it for your football because you're going to get injured. You're going to have a knock, a strain. Some of you will get really badly injured. And I say some, I'm being polite. There are a lot of you will get really badly injured, and you're going to need access to help. So as a bare minimum, let's just say to you here, you join us, you will pay a monthly annual fee, but we let you pay it monthly. And we will give you back more than it costs you to be a member in these cash benefits. We've been able to build a scheme that, we've fallen into a bigger pot, which are run by a major company. And we say to players, look, just exist on our platform and it will pay for itself year after year without fail, even if you don't get injured. So you can pay for scans, for consultations, for private physio. There are things people don't think about. You know, a chiropodist will tell you if you're in a changing room and you're playing football, you know, in a humid environment, your feet are getting stamped on and kicked, you should see a chiropodist every 3 months. You know, that's a recommendation. It will pay for that. If you have ongoing niggling pain, which you can't get rid of, you know, you could use it to go and see a chiropractor once a month to click out your back. All of these things are just things you can do to get your money back. And then if you do get injured, you can then use it for the scan, the consult, etc. We've then gone on to build it further now. So we've just this week been able to shake hands on what we call an Our Game Health, which is going to be a nationwide sports and medicine service, basically. So anyone in the country will be able to plug in and access our network of connections to be able to then go and see elite level providers at discounted rates, also using our insurance or our membership money to pay for it. So you no longer have to, sit and wait for months for an NHS appointment, which, let's face it, as well, is going to take even longer because of COVID. You know, we've put solutions together, which, if I look back on it now, I think, yeah, this is, if you don't mind me saying myself, it's impressive. I wish I had it when I played, but now it is available for players to take advantage of and to be protected and supported as if they were in the professional game. They just have to be prepared to get involved rather than sitting around and waiting for somebody to come and give it to them, because that just doesn't happen.
You must have helped hundreds of players at this point over the years. That's got to be a really satisfying feeling for you.
Yeah, without a doubt. So there's some stories which players have shared with me over the time. Those who come back and express their gratitude, I don't ask for it, but they express their gratitude, and it impacts you really to think you've made a difference to some of these guys, where they've got injured and they can't work, and, they've needed to, pay bills, or they've needed to help to get back playing, or just even get back on their feet again. And it's been able to do that in a way which has been built from scratch. It was an idea and a concept which I've then managed to pull together into reality, and then to be able to provide that support. I am proud of it, because I also look at it and think there are people or organisations with infrastructure behind them or money behind them who aren't achieving what we're doing for some of these players. So I do take a degree of pride from that, for sure.
On the other side of the coin, do you get frustrated hearing stories of players who end up regretting that they've left themselves at risk?
The worst conversation I have continuously is the "Dukes, how you doing? Yeah, all right, thanks. Yeah, I meant to sign up for our game, but I kept forgetting. All right, that's cool. Well, let's do it now. Yeah, but the thing is, I'm injured," and I kept that so many times. And people, it's literally, what you need to do, but the choice for so many becomes they'd rather pay for their phone. They'd rather pay for the night out. They'd rather put £300 in a pair of shoes or a belt or football boots, and as if everyone else is going to take care of their football needs for them. And when we say here's a system which absolutely you cannot lose by, it's that clear. You can't lose, because even if you don't get injured, you can just still use the money you've paid to get access to benefits which will help your body, help your life. But people sometimes still want to wait until it's too late and then ask for miracles. And, we've probably built a rod for our own back by performing quite a few miracles. But we've had to move to a stage where we've scaled up, to a level where we just can't do it anymore. You need to join and do the right thing, because once you do the right thing, I can assure you we will do the right thing by you. And our, reviews and people who've used our service, will testify to that as well. We're proud of our record of help, and we just know we're going to be able to help even more people as we keep moving forward.
Do you think we as a game look after our non-league players well enough?
No. I think there's enough money in the game to be able to cascade down to do a lot. I think it's flagged up, particularly at the moment with COVID, where people maybe League One, League Two are looking at the Premier League and saying, well, you should be able to help us out so we can, keep existing. And I do agree. There's no point having a 20-team Premier League if there's no teams below. But the problem we have in football is, or my belief, is people are very reactive rather than proactive. So in terms of the injury situation, for example, they'll wait until things have gone wrong and then try to, stick a plaster on a gaping hole, as opposed to maybe saying, well, let's not put everything into the budget now, the playing budget. Let's put some into the budget. Let's put some into rehab. Let's put some into a rainy day. Let's put some into, making sure the community scheme, all of those things can be done. But it just seems to be so much, let's put it onto the first team. And then as you come down the levels, there's less and less given to the, non-league teams or the lower league teams, but they have the same needs when things go wrong. If you get injured as a Isthmian player or as a Premier League player, you are going to need the same treatment. You may not need it as quickly because you don't have to be back to play for a high value game, but you still need to, recover and rebuild yourself up. It's going to have the same cost, and that it's just, the resource just isn't given. And we've created, again, just saying it as it is, we have created a way that people can plug into and have this met in a sustainable way and an affordable way. But then the decision still then becomes, you have to then shift some of your existing resource or your mindset away from what you're doing currently to embrace something new. And that at times is a challenge. People are set in their ways and still remain reactive rather than proactive. One of the things that really I can never understand, where clubs will run, GoFundMe pages to help players after they've been injured. Now, someone somewhere needs to realise you play football, there is going to be an injury at some stage. So if you can have a mechanism in place to protect against it, you then don't need to be, asking for short notice, help or charity to be able to help something which realistically, is going to happen. You don't know who it's going to happen to. You don't know when it's going to happen to. But to be surprised that someone breaks a leg, tears an ACL, has to stop working, or has to stop playing football, to be surprised that happens in football week after week, month after month, year after year, you've got to be crazy.
We'll end it on that very important point. Francis, it's been a great pleasure to catch up again. Thank you so much for joining me.
Cheers, Chris. Thanks very much.
Where can we find more about Our Game?
Right, our website is ourgamefootball.com. We're also on all the social media platforms. So Twitter, we're on @our_game. Instagram, we are on @our_game_football. And Facebook is also Our Game Football. So we're on all the platforms and we're just trying to spread the message. We give advice. We do a lot to just give advice and share information. There'll be some mental health support coming along the way, for example. So it's definitely stuff people should, plug into. We're not here for the hard sell. We're here to help, and we know it does help.
Don't sleep on this. It's really important stuff. If you've enjoyed meeting Francis in this episode, there's plenty more where that came from. Don't forget to subscribe to the show if you haven't already. Leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. Humans are Non-League is a Sphinx Football production. Thank you for listening.